afternoon, good morning, wherever you are in the world. And welcome to the AfricaNEV podcast, where we talk about sustainable energy and transport for Africa. My name is Gad Senyejom Ashiabo, and today I am here with Olukokun. Introduce yourself.
Hi, my name is Olukokun. I'm a Nigerian and I'm proud to be an African. Yeah.
And from Kenya, the billionaire next door.
Hey, billionaire, really? I'm not sure about that, but thank you for your prayers. I'm John Singo. I'm in Nairobi, Kenya.
Okay. And the battery Don. Please introduce yourself.
Me?
No, Elliot.
Oh.
Elliot, introduce yourself.
Oh, this is all right. I'm Elliot from Accra.
I think your connection is bad.
Yeah, Elliot's internet has refused. It said no.
I have a lot as far as vehicle school, and it's a pleasure to be here with all you great guys.
But today our special guest is the beautiful Wacera Wambugu.
Wacera Wambugu. It's okay.
Wacera. It's Wacera. Please, I want to be corrected. It's Wacera Wambugu.
Yes, Wambugu, yes.
Yeah, and our topic is quality standards and energy access in Africa. And welcome to the AfricaNEV podcast.
Thank you.
Okay, so what's energy access? Energy access.
Okay. So actually my answer to that was going to be energy access is massive. So there is the biomass component of energy access. I don't deal with that. And then there's the electricity component of energy access. So the biomass component and the thermal components, they tend to have mechanical engineers mostly. Actually, that's where most of the mechanical engineers I know who are working in energy access in Kenya are working on thermal systems, because that's what they learn. I cannot help you with thermal systems if you hit me on the head. I'm unable completely. So in terms of energy access, the place where my sector is electricity access. And in electricity access specifically, I do look at both on-grid and off-grid. So on-grid, with regards to on-grid, it comes to, mostly there's the grid expansion. That one in most on-grid systems is done by the electricity provider, so like our KPLC. So I'm not very associated with the expansion itself. But then once the expansion is done, one of the things that I've been looking at has been electrical appliance use. What appliances exist in the market? What appliances can people use? And especially gendered appliances. So by gendered appliances, I'm talking about appliances in the kitchen, appliances that take over women's work. So for example, a washing machine that, instead of having to bend and rub on clothes until they become clean, you just throw in something and it cleans itself, right? So I do look at a spectrum of appliances and including electric cooking, because I like saying this. I think we got very stuck on biomass cooking. So when we're talking about energy access, a lot of times we get stuck in this conversation of improving the cook stove a little bit, improving this a little bit, getting it to use less charcoal. But I do think that there's a lot of capacity on doing electrical cooking itself. Because I have an electric cooker in my house. I have a gas cooker, right? And those kinds of systems need also to be available to women in rural areas. So that's one of the things. For off-grid systems, there's different levels. So for off-grid systems, so for on-grid systems, there's also, I'd say, large commercial solar PV plants that actually feed into the grid. I work in a place with one of them, but that is not of interest in this conversation. So when you're talking about off-grid systems, we are talking about systems not connected to the grid. But I like also mentioning that even houses with electricity, right, can have an off-grid system. Okay. So like we've said, because of our Kenya Power and our meat problem, we're going to install a solar panel on the roof so that when we buy meat in bulk, because Africans really love meat, when we buy meat in bulk, it doesn't get spoiled when Kenya Power decides to switch off the fridge. So off-grid systems, you'll have off-grid systems that are used by people in off-grid areas. That means that people who are completely off the grid, they're not served by any way by the grid. But there's also off-grid systems that I guess are installed. So we can call them backup systems. So some people will not even use them as backup. I was talking to a certain hospital that has Kenya Power, John, and do you know what they said? They have both Kenya Power and a solar PV system, but they use the solar PV system as the primary and the
Kenya
grid
Power
provider as the backup.
That's the case in Nigeria.
Right? Okay, so for Kenya, that's shocking because I know Kenya Power is not reliable, but it's not that bad.
Okay.
So for them, because for them, they were like, it became so inconveniencing. Every 7 days, there's 1 day of shutdown or a couple of minutes. So they decided to switch, make the solar their main, and then use Kenya Power as backup. So we're going to see a lot more of this. And the reason why I said these off-grid systems, and they have a lot of names these days. So you'll hear distributed renewable energy systems. That just means the ones on your roof. So they can be off-grid or on-grid. You'll hear them being called off-grid. So there's all these different terms that are kind of referencing similar things. But at the end of the day, what we're saying is there is a place for distributed renewable energy systems. And now to answer Elliot's question, the problem we're trying to solve is that, first of all, for African countries, like we've said, our grid providers are unreliable. And when I say unreliable, I'm saying even those 20 minutes of blackout, in some cases, in a hospital, that's a lot, right? So for as long as we want to have reliable energy, we might have to use distributed renewable energy systems versus the grid ones, yeah? So not a replacement, but to some extent, maybe a symbiotic relationship, right? But at the same time, maybe even a replacement. So the problem we have is we have unreliable electricity. We need to fix that. And in some cases, so we have unreliable electricity and we have sometimes no electricity. So that's a problem we're trying to fix. And to fix this problem, we have to rethink the grid. We have to rethink how we do electricity supply. So what we have right now is the entire system of the world is built around the AC system. You know, solar is DC. So if you're going to electrify majorly with solar, which is what looks like will happen in Africa, yes, there'll be a bit of wind, but it looks like for Africa, mostly it will be solar.
That is it. That is it.
Yes.
That is it for Africa.
So if you're going to do electrification with solar, we also need to think about appliances. We also need to think, because I can tell you there's very few Africans who will be like, okay, let me use DC because it's a good whatever, and then buy, you know. And when we're thinking about appliances, we have to think about economies of scale. The reason why our phones are very cheap is because a lot of them are being produced, right? So if we standardize appliances, DC appliance, if you standardize maybe cables and stuff for DC appliances, so that someone can go buy a bulb and not have to worry, will this bulb actually work with my DC system, right? If we actually standardize the DC systems in such a way that manufacturers can sell a multitude of maybe bulbs without having to concern themselves about whether the consumer will be able to use it or not, this is where we're going. This is the direction we're taking in terms of solar, right? And we want to get to a point where you walk into a shop, you look at an appliance, you buy it off the shelf, and maybe at that time you have floods at your place, right? So there's a lot of flooding and the Kenya Power of your place has gone down and they'll come back in 3 months, but you can still buy your appliance and plug it into your house and move on with your life. That can still happen in an AC world, in a world where we're converting the solar to AC and then back, but we're losing so much power there, power that would otherwise be used for something else. So I hope I've answered Elliot's question.
Okay, yeah. You have answered Elliot's question. Now, John,
Yes.
you say you have a question, right? But
Yes.
but before you go that, I want Patrick. Patrick, hello?
Yes, boss.
Good. I want you to talk to what Anne just said from your perspective as an equipment manufacturer and supplier. What are some of the challenges you have faced because of a lack of standards? Okay.
What is it, in Europe or Africa?
Both.
Okay.
You can give us because we want to have a context for what she's saying, and I believe that you can give us that context.
I mean, in Europe, we haven't had any of these issues, but obviously in Ghana is new, so we are focusing on one to bring cost-effective products, to make sure that obviously it works due to the condition and temperature. So we need to factor all this into our production. But like I said, this is new to me, so we haven't had any issue so far in Europe.
In other words, what you are saying is that either your equipment are made to European standards, then that you have to now adapt to the Ghanaian environment, or you have to now define your own standards for your equipment.
Exactly.
That will fit Ghana.
Yeah. But
goes
so
back
far,
to Anne's point, because if that's the case, then when Olukokun designs his equipment, he must also design something that will fit his standards that he has chosen out of the blue.
I mean,
So
there's
economics of scale become a problem, is it?
There's two standards anyway. If you think about it, you have CCS combo, you have Chademo, or you have AC type 1 or type 2. Okay. So it's either customer like I think 2 weeks ago, one customer in Ghana contacted me about a fast DC charger for his Audi e-tron.
Okay.
So we talked about it, and I recommended the best one, and also due to the power, we had to go for 11 kilowatts.
Okay.
But that's based on obviously using the CCS combo or type 2. So the standard that we using the kind of European or the American or the Japanese ones, but for Africa bear in mind that in Africa we don't manufacture vehicles. So the vehicles that have been manufactured in overseas, we have to stick to their protocols. But coming to Ghana, there's no manufacturer, not even Kantanka.
Good. No. You see, Patrick, you have actually illustrated Anne's point, to my view, perfectly. Okay? So right now, in this case, for example, what you are basically saying is that anybody trying to even import these cars to Ghana, Nigeria, or whatever, they have to now pick maybe another country's standards and use here. So interoperability, that challenge will remain.
Yeah, I mean, we can always set our standard, but that will take long. Bear in mind that, I mean, first of all, we need support from the government, because it all boils down to money. Secondly, once the government, I mean, puts some money inside, we can create our own standard, but 99% of this issue comes from the fact that we don't manufacture any vehicles in our country. Not even in Kantanka, even though people think they do, they don't. So, I mean, there's other country, or maybe there's a company in Zambia that was talking to the other time. There's a few companies in Africa where they are assembling the products, but when it comes to proper manufacturing, it's an issue for our continent. So we have to stick to something that is already there and try to work with it till we understand how it works, and then we can implement it to our continent. With that being said, I mean, there's the other companies that are trying to do this.
Okay, so maybe I'm going to build on what Patrick has said. So I'm with actually the Ghana National Committee on a number of my standards. So I think I know someone in each African country through my committees.
Okay.
There's just that. So the way standardization works right now is because we don't do a lot of manufacturing, like Patrick says, is we take existing standards and then we adopt them to our countries.
Yeah.
So you modify them to suit our countries.
You'd think sometimes people actually just copy paste them and call them their country's
standards.
standard.
Yes.
Yes. But then the biggest problem with that kind of format is that sometimes there's very little space actually to shift the standard, because then standards work is voluntary. So a lot of people don't see money in it, and they're like, why would I go help my so in Kenya it's called Kenya Bureau of Standards. Why would I go help Kenya Bureau of Standards to do standardization when they're not paying me, right? So the reason for us doing standardization on DC is, I'm going to be honest, like Patrick has said, it's happening for vehicles. So maybe Japan has its standard for vehicles, UK has its standards for vehicles, and then maybe one day will. But for DC appliances, do you know who needs them? Africa.
All of us.
People around the world. Other people around the world have already their AC grids working for them. They don't have the same problems as us. You understand? So the people who actually need appliances to be in DC format are us guys. We're the ones who are going to be benefiting from this. So we have to actually lead the way on this one. And India is actually doing that because India is in a similar position to Africa.
Because
so
the
India,
West doesn't have the problem we have. You see?
Yeah. So India is also leading the conversation around DC systems. So Africa as a whole, it's our war to fight. Don't expect people from outside, because the reason why they have standards for electric vehicles is because they have a market for electric vehicles.
We're coming there soon. John, please, you have the floor. We have a question for Anne.
In fact, my question has actually been answered by Anne. Because, I think that we really need to look at it in terms of the West are not going to help us with this. This is something that is mainly based and is going to help us Africans. I'm looking at it in a point of view whereby, as I told you the other time, the distributed systems, the small ecosystems, what is going to happen is that is the future. You have the AC grid or the grid running outside your house, but it's too expensive to connect to that. So what do? You get a small ecosystem and you use that. Eventually, when your purchasing power goes higher, you'd want a TV, you'd want a fridge. You see, we should start thinking about, in all African countries, trying to bring in DC equipment. But that is not going to work.
DC. To modularize DC in a way that actually fits our pockets. Because we don't have big pockets as Africans. Our pockets are limited. But we need to create an energy system, an energy access system that actually fits our pockets. Yeah. Yes. The PEGO systems are trying to do that, but the thing about the PEGO systems is that right now they're stuck at tier 2 of the SMAP tiers. So right now for PEGO systems, you should be able to get up to a TV, but people want to do more. You understand? People want to be able to put a milling system up, to mill their grains. People want to, be able to figure out, maybe even in terms of electric mobility, carry their water from one place to the other on a bicycle that's electrified. It's easier, right? But all these systems, the constraint when it comes to Africa, we would not probably be having a lot of problems if our constraint was not money. But we have a financial constraint to look at.
What?
Right? Yeah. We have to try and build systems that are affordable to our fellow Africans.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay. So now
that are within our means.
I think so. It has been clearly established that we really do need these standards, and for a number of reasons that we have all spoken about. My next question is to Anne. Is practically, in terms of having a homogeneous standard across the continent, from her experience on these standards bodies, is it doable? Is it, no. I'm asking this because, you see, Africa, we have, our continent is very big. That is one thing most people don't
Very
really
big.
understand.
Yeah.
And very diverse. We are mainly Black people, but we are very diverse. And even our governance structures are wild. We have democracies to dictatorships to anything in between. Do you get it? So
Yes.
is it possible? Is it possible?
So I'm gonna say it's possible in pockets. So for example, if you're talking about standardizing the our stuff, East Africa already does that. So for example, Kenya, Tanzania, and Uganda, we already have cross-cutting standards. So East Africa, actually, it's not Kenya, Tanzania, and Uganda. There's Rwanda. So there's the small countries, Rwanda and Burundi, I think, and South Sudan recently joined us.
How does that work in practical terms? Is it that?
So that's in terms of especially trade. So for example, if something is tested and it's approved in Kenya, it's allowed to enter Tanzania, right? And then if something is tested and approved by the Tanzania Bureau of Standards, it's allowed to come into Kenya. So it's like breaking down trading barriers. And that's another thing that standardization will do. So I've had a lot of people talking about AfCFTA, the one which Nigeria delayed.
Forget about that for now. We are coming there. We are coming there. No. So therefore.
So for such things, I
know I'm interrupting the train of thoughts, but I want to know: is this being done under the umbrella of your East African trading zone, or is a separate? It's being done under that. Yes. In other words, you can scale it out to the continental free trade agreement level.
I think so. So the problem is, I think we'll need to do it in pockets first. So ECOWAS, SADC, EAC, you understand? So we'll need to do some of these things in pockets. But we'll now but there's some efforts actually at the continent level to actually start at the continent level. I do see problems with that kind of thinking, but I think the most successful. Okay, so for example, let's talk about Congo. Congo is one country, but some sections of Congo cannot be connected to some other sections of Congo because the voltages are different. Yes, you understand? So Congo is just an example of how tough it will be for Africa because Congo as a country is very big. And some sections actually developed in a different way from some sections, which means that even in terms of standardization of the country itself, it's a bit complex, right? So I do see challenges in political buy-in, because I'm guessing for a politician, think about it this way. Our politicians think in terms of, in Kenya, they think in terms of 5 years. If you're thinking past 5 years, you're not with them. That's not their interest.
Well, that's an election cycle.
Yeah, that's an election cycle. So we limit, a lot of times you need and this is what Asian countries had. They had visionaries, people who agreed to do things past their election cycle, right? And that's what I think Kenya had with the president called Kibaki. A guy who decided, okay, I'm gonna look past my election cycle and maybe invest in roads and such stuff. So I do think that the main limit for Africa is that election cycle. So I'm going to repeat this. I think the most important thing is the political buy-in, number one, which I don't think we're going to have with our current group of politicians, whose thought processes end with the election cycle, as you said. Number two, we'll need to finance the standardization. There's also questions of, I guess, there's the power pools which have already been created. So there's the West African power pool, the East African power pool. All these are supposed to think through, I guess, all these are supposed to think through how you're going to standardize your section. But then there's also the question of who's financing this, and mostly the power pools are being financed using development money. And as all of you know, development money normally comes with some strings attached, right? And it doesn't come to actually develop your engineering most of the time. It comes to find a way to sell things to your people.
Now, let me jump in again. You see, the reason why I'm having this conversation with you, Elliot is gone, is because we want to take control of our standards and by extension of our markets. From my point of view, it does not take much to define a standard. All it takes is a pen and paper and somebody who knows what they are doing. Okay? If you say define a standard for DC standard for electric motors up to this size, you don't have a know-how. You can define the standards. All you need is maybe the president and the parliamentarians who can or the standard body to pass it into law. What that means is that if I am going to produce equipment for this very market, I must make sure that I conform to your standards. For you to conform, you have to come and test your product, right? That means that the standard authority of whichever country is going to make money off you. I don't see the difficulty. The difficulty is in whether our politicians will do it. So now, for the East African Trade Zone, how did you guys go about it? That's you accept.
I think East Africa that's in principle how East Africa works. It's not just even in terms of trading. Even me going to Tanzania, I don't need a passport. My national ID, I think, is enough. And also Rwanda. So I've gone to Rwanda a couple of times and I didn't carry my passport. I just went with my national ID card for Kenya. So I think the concept, even, so Uganda, for example, I come from somewhere very close to Uganda, and crossing over the border is just walking. There's very little in terms of, even our borders, especially the border between Kenya and Uganda is very malleable. People walk in and out of the border without having a lot of problems. Some people, your dad lives on this side. One of your dad's wives lives on this side because that area tends to be polygamous. The other one is from Uganda. So will you come and tell that person that you're Ugandan or you're Kenyan? Some of them even have 2 national IDs. So for Uganda and for Kenya. So because it's, that's just the way things are. So you'll find that in terms of standardization, to be honest, there's already existing standards for a lot of things. I'm not pro us developing new things, reinventing the wheel. The only thing I think we need to push, is the narrative around DC standardization, because it's not a massive priority outside there, and the reason is because, like I said, DC standards, DC systems, for example, are coming in to solve problems that are mostly with Africans. Yeah. So if we want to actually have, and like I said, look at it from the point of view of economies of scale. So if you're able to standardize DC systems, you'll have more access to appliances, and even cheaper. They'll come down, they become cheaper. Because then the moment you standardize, they become, manufacturers can see the reason why they should put their effort into selling, into producing this, because then they'll make profits. Yeah. So someone like what was his name? I forgot his name.
Elliot.
Yes, the guy in the workshop. Yes.
No,
so
that's Olukokun. That's Olukokun.
Yes. So someone like him, right now, if he's to produce an appliance, just one, right? There's very little incentive for him to actually put in an investment for a factory, because there's very few, the voltage, like I said, voltages are not standardized and all these different things are not standardized.
It may only work in Nigeria.
He'd have to produce an appliance for this one, a different types of appliance, you understand? And having similar things across the board is why it's easier to, I just use the word economies of scale. The more you can produce, the cheaper it will become. So if you can produce like 1 million phones versus producing, a single phone for this voltage, a single phone for this one, it becomes an issue. So I think the most crucial thing in terms of Africans is to push the narrative forward, because like I said, it's our problem to solve. There are people who've invested a bit into this, But then I can tell you for free that I get financing for different things that I do. One of the toughest thing to get financing for has been to look at potential for DC. Yeah. And when you do, it comes in small chunks. So someone wants you to look at this type of appliance, someone wants you to look at, then the whole, to feed into the entire conversation about DC systems, we'll need to look at it from a holistic point of view. What can we change? What can be done? And all these different things. And that's the thing that we really, really need to. So how it will be done, it's a bit complex. So you can have people like me who are in research and consultancy doing our part. And there's a lot to be done. The lay of the land, how that will be done, still it's 50-50. I'm saying 50-50 because I'm very careful about copy pasting what I have learned European countries are doing into our systems, right? So I would rather we actually as a continent somehow figured out how we want to do this versus saying, okay, Europe was doing this, so let's just copy it. Because first of all, it's a new type of technology, quote unquote. But at the same time, it's because, copy pasting has not worked so far. This whole continent is copy pasted as is right now. And maybe we should not have been copy pasted, to some extent.
Anyway, I want to acknowledge Luta. She has been on the call. She's a fellow country lady. She's a moderator of AfricaNEV. Aluora, her staff are muted. Aluora, say hi.
Hi guys. Hi. Sorry, I came in late, so I didn't quite follow the conversation. But thank you, Anne, for joining us and for being so informative in your discussion.
Thank you.
She's the only lady amongst three guys, so we value her greatly. She's our golden lady. Anyway, Anne, now, one of the things that have come up recently on the AfricaNEV community is this whole DC standards. You see, in your presentation, you made reference to the fact that even in terms of getting financing for DC standard work, it comes in trickles, right? Now, we know from the global marketplace that the DC device that has actually driven a lot of volume and scale is EVs. All right. Now, today in 2020, EVs are nowhere. The EVs that we have in the world now are not fit for purpose when it comes to Africa. Okay, because Africa, we need mass market EVs, the minivan kind of EVs and all that. And also Africa, we have certain unique challenges. We're talking about availability of electricity, our roads, our maintenance culture, etc., etc., etc. Now, what we realize is that we want to do sort of like a reference framework, okay? So that, okay, if we are making an EV, at least an EV must have this and this and this. For example, we know that in Africa, we are using this kind of charging standard. We're talking about DC charging. Maybe we are using CCS2. It has already been defined. If it's an EV that's coming to Africa, it must be capable of bi-directional charging. Okay, basic things like this that we can then propagate using channels like yours to the various standards bodies, which would then help everybody to get the, what do you call it, the scale that we are looking for, and which would then even impact directly what you are doing in the standard space. What is your position on something like this, and how feasible?
So like Like Patrick said, one of our biggest challenges, sorry, that's the neighbor's kid. I don't know if they, yeah. So one of the biggest challenges that we have on the continent, like Patrick said, is that we don't manufacture. When you don't manufacture, the only other thing you can use to set rules for people is your market share. So, yet it's the one thing that I see African presidents handing over, you know, African presidents and politicians handing over, yeah, without thinking. Because when a development partner is giving you money, they're not giving you free money. They're giving you money. For example, there's one country from Europe that has been pouring a lot of money.
I know the country you're talking about.
I'm not going to say which one, but they're pouring a lot of money into the EV.
Which country is it?
No. All I will say is that the first letter of their name is one of the first 6 letters of the English alphabet. It can be A, it can be B, it can be C, it can be D, it can be E, it can be F, it can be G.
You don't know what you're saying. What?
In fact, after G, what was the next letter? H. It can be H. Even I'll dash you H for free.
You are hungry. You are in hungry.
Yeah, it's a country. It's a country.
Yeah. So there's so the European country in question, you might think that they're doing, you know, they're giving you free money, but what they're doing is they're scoping African countries. Yeah, the market. They're scoping the African countries' market for EV, trying to see what appropriate EV systems will be here, using actually, you know, and then also trying to funding their startups to actually develop a product for the continent based on the data that you've collected, right? And this is something that I'm saying African countries not really think through a lot. So it can give you higher negotiation power, even in terms of what. So if you're going onto the table with European countries and they're telling you, we're going to give you aid of this much, it's never really aid because it's development money for themselves.
It's a form of
they come
trade.
and employ their own people. They give you money and then they employ their own people to use the money. So it's normally I think the development sector is one of the funniest places I've ever worked, because what we call aid is a very, yeah, or you give people aid and then they bring their own products to sell to you. So at the end of the day, it ends up creating jobs for their countries, which I don't, look, if my taxpayers gave you money, I'd also want that. But the thing I want to say is that there's a higher negotiation power that African countries have, right? And we should be able to use that to say, okay, look, this is the quantity of our market. That is also something that the Kenyan government cannot tell you. If you ask the Kenyan government today, how many people do you think in your country would want to use a tractor? I can tell you for free, they will not be able to tell you. And they don't get that such things are the ones that people want to see.
That is one thing that AfricaNEV, we are picking up on ourselves, and we started generating some data. And yes, personally, I have seen a lot of excitement from some of this data. But you see, the other side of this, talking about what you were saying, the development agenda, it works because our politicians, to them, it is free money. So if it's $100, they will cream off $80 and use $20 for the work. That has been the model. So you see, so far as we are willing as a population, we are able to buy into what they are selling. They don't have a problem. Now, where we are going is this. Because of this whole micro grids, distributed grids, whatever you want to call them, okay, people are now able increasingly to check out for the system. All right. So before you want to check out, you need a lot of money. Maybe you have to travel outside Africa, whatever. But it's becoming increasingly possible for you to be in Ghana, Kenya, South Africa, wherever you are, and check out. You understand? So that also means that unless our standards authorities and our political class especially, who control these entities, are willing to change, the conversation is going to be hijacked from them.
It is always hijacked. So at the end of the day, it will be hijacked by people who actually do not understand our problems. And I'm not against the development sector. I'm just saying that the development sector is notorious for not working with Africans to solve Africa's problems. The development sector brings people from countries, people who do not know what it feels like to not have electricity, people who've never experienced a blackout in their life, to come and solve our problems without us in their midst.
But you see, that is what I'm trying to say, that now
yes,
we want to hijack the conversation, the conversation ourselves, we the citizens, because when we look at, I look at AfricaNEV, for example, you see an entire spectrum of people. Okay, we have the makers like Olukokuns and whatever. We have those who are into standards. Okay, one of the gentlemen, I think he has to go and do something. He works in the standards body. We have some policy makers all across. We have lawyers. We have all manner of individuals who are interested in the space. What we seem to lack is coordination across geographies, okay, and across the sectors.
Yeah.
I don't know whether you get what I'm saying, because that is what actually brings the benefits. All right. If we have this framework there, it's a reference framework. If you are a lazy government or standards authority, now there's an alternative. You can, instead of going to copy from Europe, some people have done this work. They have put it there as a reference standard for Africa, and they're Africans. I hope you understand. You can use that. You cannot copy that and use it for your country.
I think, that's one of the things that I think I'm big on when it comes to standards. So anyway, to finish answering the EV question, I think EV is actually one of the first places, like you've said, that's becoming more, that's showing the world that DC systems are possible. I like that. At the same time, my main concern with EVs is that lack of plug standardization. You can't use plug. You can't a charger. Good. Yes. So you can't use one charger on another vehicle, and you can't use that one on another vehicle. And think about it this way. I don't know what's the most remote place that you come from. And for me, for example, I'm talking about where I come from. It's called Cherangani. So this place is very far. So this guy in Cherangani, their plug, something happens to their plug. And then they have to order from someone in Nairobi to actually import from somewhere, because this plug is not interchangeable with another one in the market. That is my main concern with EVs. That lack of interoperability is extremely problematic.
And that is what we are talking about. This very same thing. That, you see, when I look at the African space for EVs, and I can say with all confidence that I understand the space very, very well. What is clear is that the most critical thing that we ought to do is to adopt a particular standards for charging. So if it is CCS we are using, CCS1, CCS2, across Africa, that is our standard. So even if you are manufacturing the thing, once we are bringing it.
If you want to tap into a market, please follow this,
And you see, what that means is that all of a sudden, I can drive my EV all the way from Accra to Mombasa. Okay? Because anywhere along the line, we can charge. You see, already, I think Africa, I don't know of any country that uses 110 volts. We all use 240 volts. Okay? So once we have the same connector for DC charging, we are good to go. Anyway, Anne, I think that this has been very illuminating and eye-opening. But for the making of many books, like I always say, there is no end. We have to end somewhere. The session, I may even have to divide it into two for the YouTube podcast.
Okay.
Anybody has any question? We have
8 minutes.
8 minutes. Any questions? Aluora, no, hold on, please. I'm using my video. Aluora, please. We are giving you the floor.
I pardon you.
Why you put me on the spot?
Any question for
Nothing in particular. I think it has been a really fruitful discussion. And we actually look forward to, as we are planning to develop the framework, I think we could use the expertise that we have on this platform. And probably gets on chatting a little bit more with Anne and as well as other members on this call and in the EV group. So thank you so much for everything. I don't have any question in particular. I think you're the experts. You've said all.
Okay, anybody have any question?
I do, of course. But before then, I always like this Aluora voice each time she speaks.
It makes you feel good. It makes you feel good.
Makes me and when I saw the banner for this session and I looked at your picture, I know you are a beauty with brains. And I'm so glad for this session. And okay, one thing I quickly want to ask first is, you say by virtue of this commission, maybe you are the chairperson or something, that
I'm the chairperson of the young professionals.
The young professionals, are they in Nigeria here?
I tried getting Nigeria to join. I don't know if they actually finally joined because the national committee is the one that's supposed to join. And I met this, Nigerians have a lot of stories. So the last time I met someone, they gave me a lot of stories.
I think that
Olukokun, you have brought yourself. You have brought yourself.
After now, you and I, we have to talk so we can find these people, because I want an extension of whatever we are discussing. We are talking about Africa. This is not just one country or one country. Everybody must be on board. And you see, Nigeria has a peculiar case, no doubt. Everybody knows we are different, we are unique, we are the superpower of Africa.
No, you are extreme. Nigeria, you are extreme. You are extreme.
I'm still talking, So, and like Aluora said, we are working. We've decided to work on a framework for e-mobility in Africa. And why I asked the first question is because we really need to push for this framework to really be adopted by different countries in Africa. So you already you are championing the cause already. You will need you to shed more light into how we can penetrate into making sure that what we have can be adopted by most countries in Africa.
Definitely. Yeah. Because I have a lot of experience in standardization, I can guide you guys and also maybe help you out where you need to.
In fact, we are co-opting you to the what is it that Aluora call it? Is it the focus group?
Framework.
No, Aluora has named it for us. It's the focus group.
Okay.
Because I personally hate committees. Committees just come and talk.
Talking and talking. And then you never actually do anything. Yeah.
And they will drink tea. They will drink tea and coffee.
So it's a focus group, not a committee.
Yes.
Yeah,
so
group.
they must be focused.
So John had a question. We have 4 minutes.
Yeah. I just wanted to ask, in terms of African countries, where are we seeing the most being done? Because you have a lot of, you talk to a lot of African countries, and maybe that would be a good place for us to focus on. And with that, that can form sort of like a backbone or something that can guide all the other African countries.
Okay. So there's a lot of conversations around mini grids and solar PV systems. So if we're to do something, my understanding is let's center it around solar PV systems. So whether it's mini grids, whether it's the Pico PV systems, the plug and play ones, whether it's the solar home systems, that's where most of the conversation is happening. There's different aspects to it. Yes, a bit more towards the off-grid ones than the on-grid ones. But at the same time, there's also conversations around, I guess, appliances for on-grid already. But then I guess for on-grid, there's just questions about reliability. So I tend to avoid that and just focus on solar PV systems, mini grids, and such stuff. So things that, yeah. So if we're discussing about looking at something, I guess that is a good place for that to start. Also, EVs are becoming a hot conversation. Question is, like I asked God, are they going to develop the way we want them to develop, right?
Okay.
Or are we going to end up with 20 different flags?
No. For me personally, I am determined.
There's always two.
Yeah.
There's always what?
Patrick said something.
Is it there's always two?
I mean, regardless, there will be the Chademo and CCS combo. Regardless, I mean, maybe we might have some GBT, but depending on who brings the car, so we might have some GBT.
Is it? And this is where I fight with Patrick a lot. You see. First of all, to me, Chademo has no future, so he's dead. The good thing about Chademo. Hold on, please. Let's not start the fight yet. The good thing about Chademo, yes, the fight is coming. The good thing about Chademo is that because of I think the Fukushima thing, the Japanese did the whole made it able to do vehicle to grid and vehicle to home charging. So it is bi-directional. You can use it to charge your car as well as use your car to charge your house or your device. I hope you understand, which is a very important feature that Africa needs. But going forward, China, they have their own GBT standards, as you said. Tesla has their type 2 charging. Then, of course, we have the CCS, that's combined charging system. And the CCS, there are two types. There is the American type and there's the European type. I hope you get what I'm saying. Now, looking at the adoption patterns, it is clear that going forward, Africa, we have to decide, the main decision to make is whether we are going for CCS 1 or CCS 2 for AC charge, so for DC charging. All right. But as for the AC charging across Africa, from the get-go, you will start with level 2 charging because we used to.